General Tessa Grant stood before the massive holographic display, a map of the galaxy that spanned across the room, flickering with the pulsating lights of distant colonies and outposts. Her fingers hovered over the controls, adjusting the positions of Earth's forces as her mind weighed the potential risks of their upcoming mission. Tessa was a woman of action, someone whose leadership was built on a calm, unwavering determination and the ability to adapt to every new challenge thrown at her. She had been through more battles than she cared to count, yet this next mission felt different. She had faced external enemies, but peace, true peace, had always remained elusive. And now she was tasked with overseeing an unprecedented diplomatic effort to bring the Zydran, a once violent alien race, into a tentative alliance with humanity. As she studied the hologram, her thoughts shifted to the delicate nature of the situation. For years, Earth had fought tooth and nail to survive and expand across the stars. Humanity's colonies spread far and wide, with military outposts protecting them and diplomatic missions attempting to unite even the most hostile of species. Tessa's reputation had been built on her leadership during the toughest of conflicts, her ability to bring together people from different worlds, and her unwavering belief that humanity could thrive. But no one had yet seen a threat like this. Her next mission, these peace talks, would challenge everything she thought she knew about trust, diplomacy, and the alliances they had fought so hard to establish. The Zydran, once enemies of humanity, had become allies in the wake of shared interests, most notably the desire to prevent intergalactic conflict. They had been a powerful, war-hardened race, their ships massive and fearsome, hovering above their homeworld like gods of old. But as they prepared to meet on their planet for the Peace Summit, Tessa knew that even the smallest misstep could shatter the fragile alliance they had formed. The tension in the room was palpable as Earth's forces prepared to take their first steps into Zydran space, a land of alien technology that was as awe-inspiring as it was intimidating. The alliance with the Zydran represented humanity's best shot at a peaceful future, but Tessa understood the risks. Earth's presence in the galaxy had always been met with skepticism and distrust by many species. The technological marvels humanity had developed, spacecraft capable of spanning light years and quantum communication systems bridging galaxies, had earned Earth respect but also suspicion. Humanity had learned to survive, to adapt and fight. But with each new step into the unknown, they faced the daunting reality that their place in the cosmos was far from secure. In the midst of this delicate peace process, the Tyrul, a militant faction of the Zydran, sought to sabotage everything. They rejected the idea of peace, their members convinced that humanity's growing influence would lead to their species' destruction. Their distrust of Earth's expanding reach led them to launch a surprise attack during the summit, capturing Tessa in a calculated strike. The Tyrul, with their superior warships, overwhelmed Earth's peacekeepers in a swift and brutal assault. The galaxy, already on edge from the negotiations, now teetered on the brink of war as the Tyrul's actions sent shockwaves through the universe. The news of Tessa's capture spread across Earth, causing immediate panic. Her absence meant more than the loss of a leader. It represented the collapse of a fragile peace and the threat of a galactic war. Earth's military, led by commanders who had grown accustomed to working under Tessa's strategic guidance, scrambled to formulate a rescue mission. But the situation was dire. The Tyrul had taken her aboard their massive warship, a ship that dwarfed anything humanity had ever constructed. Every second spent in their clutches brought Earth closer to losing the very thing they had fought so hard to secure: peace. Every moment without her, the galaxy's fragile alliances began to unravel. Meanwhile, aboard the Tyrul warship, Tessa found herself in a cold, alien holding cell, surrounded by walls of metal and technology so advanced that it felt otherworldly. The ship was a massive structure, dark and imposing, with technologies that were incomprehensible to even her trained eyes. The architecture, jagged and cold, mirrored the hostility of her captors, and Tessa's mind raced. How had it come to this? She was a leader, someone who had brought races together, and now she was a prisoner, alone in a galaxy that felt more indifferent than ever. But Tessa was not one to be defeated so easily. Her military instincts kicked in immediately, analyzing the ship's systems, looking for any vulnerabilities she could exploit. The Tyrrell had underestimated her before, but she knew she could use their overconfidence against them. Even in captivity, Tessa refused to give up on humanity's survival. Her mind worked tirelessly, plotting every potential escape route while learning more about her captors, their hatred of humanity, their fear of Earth's growing influence in the galaxy, and their desire to dismantle the fragile alliances Earth had worked so hard to establish. As Earth's military leaders mobilized for a rescue, Tessa's situation grew more dire. The Tyrrell's plan to destroy the peace process was unfolding, and her capture was only the first step. Her allies on Earth scrambled to react, but their technology was no match for the Tyrrell's superior weaponry and advanced ships. As Earth teetered on the brink of war, Tessa's fate was uncertain, but her legacy as a symbol of human strength remained unbroken. Even from within the confines of her cell, she knew that her next steps would define humanity's place in the stars. The galaxy might be vast, but humanity was not so easily crushed. Her mind raced through every possibility, every tactical advantage she might have, and yet as the days passed, Tessa's hope began to falter. It wasn't just about her escape, it was about survival. Earth's future hung in the balance, and if she failed, the universe would remain indifferent to humanity's existence. The Tyrrell's aggressive actions had put everything they had worked for at risk, and Tessa knew she couldn't afford to let them succeed. With every ounce of her being, she refused to accept the idea that peace could be destroyed so easily. But time was running out. Tessa Grant sat in the cold, sterile confines of her cell aboard the Tyrrell's massive warship, her eyes fixed on the strange, shifting patterns of alien technology that surrounded her. The ship was an enigma, a sprawling fortress designed for war, not diplomacy. Everything about it screamed of power, of a species that had been forged in the fires of constant conflict. The walls were lined with alien interfaces, flickering with unreadable symbols, and the air hummed with a low, almost threatening vibration. There was nothing in her experience that had prepared her for this moment. Despite all of Earth's technological marvels, this ship, this alien fortress, was unlike anything she had ever seen. It was awe-inspiring and terrifying in equal measure. She had known that her peace efforts could be shattered in an instant, but nothing had prepared her for being on the receiving end of such a brutal betrayal. The Tyrrell had launched their attack, swiftly and without mercy, overwhelming Earth's peacekeepers with their superior technology. It had all been so sudden. Tessa barely had time to react before she was captured and taken aboard this monstrosity. Now, imprisoned aboard their ship, she was a pawn in their grand strategy, a bargaining chip in their war against peace. The Tyrrell were an ancient race, their entire civilization shaped by conflict and survival in a galaxy that knew no mercy. Their worldview was starkly different from humanity's, and it was clear to Tessa that they saw Earth's growing influence as a threat that had to be eradicated before it could grow any larger. For them, humanity's peaceful expansion was an affront to the delicate balance they had fought so hard to maintain. Commander Vaughn, their leader, had made it abundantly clear that humanity's survival depended on abandoning its place in the stars. Tessa paced the length of her cell, her military training kicking in as she analyzed every detail of her surroundings. She was still reeling from the shock of it all, the brutal reality of being captured, the raw hatred that Tyrrell held for her people, and the weight of the responsibility she bore. The galaxy's peace had been in her hands, and now it hung by, a thread. But she wouldn't give up. Not yet, not while there was still a chance. The ship was a maze of alien technology, and Tessa couldn't help but wonder how it all worked. Her mind was racing, calculating every move, looking for weaknesses. She'd been trained to think under pressure, to adapt to impossible situations, and she wasn't about to let this one break her. As she sat in the cold light of the holding cell, she began to piece together the Tyrrell's plan. Commander Vaughn's hatred of humanity was rooted in a deep fear, one that went beyond just there. Rapid expansion into the galaxy. Tessa soon learned that the Tyrell were terrified of a much older, much more dangerous threat, one they had been avoiding for centuries. Humanity's exploration of the stars, their relentless drive to expand, had triggered something in the Tyrell. A fear that their actions would lead to an inevitable conflict with this mysterious galactic enemy. In Vaughn's eyes, humanity's existence was not just a threat to the Tyrell, it was a ticking clock, one that would eventually lead them to face annihilation. Tessa was caught between a rock and a hard place. She could escape, but what would that mean for the colonies she had sworn to protect? If she were to flee, the Tyrell would have what they wanted, humanity retreating from the galaxy, leaving the universe for the taking. But if she stayed, she risked her life, her freedom, and the future of Earth itself. The stakes were higher than anything she had ever faced, and the moral dilemma that tugged at her was almost unbearable. Her heart screamed for survival, for escape, but her mind knew that true victory meant more than just saving herself. It meant saving Earth from the horrors Vaughn had promised to unleash. As the hours passed, Tessa's sense of isolation deepened. She couldn't escape the feeling that she was running out of time. The Tyrell's plan was unfolding, and every passing minute brought Earth closer to destruction. But in the quiet darkness of her cell, Tessa felt something shift inside her. She could no longer just wait for rescue. She had to act. She had to find a way to stop the Tyrell before they carried out their deadly plan. Tessa began to study the ship's layout. Her mind, trained for tactics, quickly mapped out the corridors, the chambers, and the security systems that kept her locked away. The Tyrell might have superior technology, but they had also made a critical mistake. They had underestimated humanity's ability to adapt. Tessa knew that every machine, every system on this ship had a weakness. It was just a matter of finding it. She studied the ship's energy readings, the fluctuations in its defenses, and began formulating a plan. This wouldn't be easy, but humanity had always thrived in the face of impossible odds. She was no different. She would find a way. Then something unexpected happened. A flicker of hope, a possibility of escape, came in the form of Lyra, a high-ranking Tyrell officer who had begun to quietly approach Tessa. Lyra had heard whispers of Tessa's leadership, of the human strength that had held Earth together in the face of so many challenges. She was different from the others, not consumed by the same blind hatred that fueled Commander Vaughn. Lyra's voice, low and hesitant, was a sharp contrast to the cold indifference of the Tyrell captors who had been watching her. "General Grant," Lyra whispered through the bars of Tessa's cell. "I don't believe in what Vaughn is doing. He has blinded himself with fear. There are others like me, but we are too few." Tessa's mind raced. Lyra's words meant nothing without proof. But in that moment, they were the first hint of a crack in the Tyrell's seemingly impenetrable facade. Lyra was offering her help, something that could change everything. It wasn't just about escape anymore. It was about something bigger, about preventing a galactic war, about stopping the Tyrell's fear from dictating the future of the galaxy. But trusting Lyra was dangerous, especially with the stakes as high as they were. Tessa had no choice but to take the risk. She would have to work with Lyra, no matter how uncertain her motives seemed. The war was coming, and it was up to her to ensure humanity survived. The time for waiting was over. Tessa's heart beat louder in her chest as she prepared herself for what was to come. She had been captured, but she had not been defeated. Not yet. She was ready to fight back, and she would not let fear control her, or the galaxy. The cold, metal walls of the Tyrrell warship seemed to press in on Tessa from all sides, her breath shallow as she paced the confines of her cell. She had attempted every escape she could think of, hacking, brute force, and stealth, each time met with failure. The Tyrrell's technology, far beyond anything humanity had encountered, was a brutal reminder of her vulnerability. Their AI controlled. Security systems anticipated every move, making it impossible to gain any ground. Each time she failed, it only intensified her resolve to find a way out. The ship's dark corridors, lined with cold, alien architecture, were a far cry from the warm, familiar spaces of Earth. She was trapped in a fortress of technological might, its very design, a testament to a race that had survived centuries of conflict. But even in captivity, Tessa refused to surrender. Her military training kicked in as she meticulously studied the ship's systems, looking for anything that could give her an edge. The Tyrrell had underestimated human ingenuity. Arrogance had made them blind to the adaptability of a species that had never stopped fighting for survival. Tessa's mind raced, calculating escape routes, studying the ship's weaknesses, and remembering every detail that might provide an opportunity for sabotage. She had no idea how long she had left before the Tyrrell decided to destroy her. But she was determined to leave nothing to chance. After several days of isolation, a new realization dawned on her. She wasn't alone. As she wandered the sterile halls of the ship, she came across other prisoners, humans and aliens alike, locked away in various cells, each of them victims of the Tyrrell's machinations. The prisoners were a mix of political dissidents, scientists, and soldiers, all held for reasons only the Tyrrell knew. Among them was Sarah, a Zidran scientist, who had been captured in the chaos following the initial betrayal. At first, Tessa was wary. Trust was a fragile thing, especially when dealing with an alien species whose own kind had once fought against humanity. But Sarah's knowledge of the ship's layout and the Tyrrell's internal workings offered Tessa something she hadn't had. In days, hope. Sarah's voice was soft but firm as she spoke of the Tyrrell's plans. The ship's central reactor, she explained, was the heart of the warship's power, both the source of its immense energy and the key to its devastating weapons. It was a highly volatile system, capable of disabling the ship entirely if tampered with. The Tyrrell, in their arrogance, had made a critical mistake. No one had considered the possibility of sabotage. Tessa's heart pounded in her chest as the realization set in. If they could destroy the reactor, they could cripple the Tyrrell's ability to wage war, buying Earth the time it needed to counter their forces. But the plan came with high stakes. If they failed, it would mean not only their deaths, but the end of any hope for Earth's survival. Tessa, ever the strategist, knew that every move had to be calculated. They would need to navigate through the heart of the Tyrrell's warship, avoiding detection by Vaughn and his loyalists. The stakes were high. This was not just a rescue mission, it was a last-ditch effort to ensure humanity's survival. Among the prisoners was Jackson, a disgruntled human who had been captured during an earlier skirmish with the Tyrrell. Desperate to escape, Jackson had his own agenda. In a moment of weakness, he attempted to bargain with the Tyrrell, offering Earth's military secrets in exchange for his freedom. It was a betrayal, one that left Tessa grappling with a moral dilemma. She could reveal Jackson's betrayal to the Tyrrell, stopping him from compromising their chance at sabotage, but doing so would risk the lives of everyone involved. She was forced to confront a difficult truth. In the face of survival, was it possible to justify betrayal for the greater good? The situation grew more complicated as Tessa learned that not all the Tyrrell were united in their vision. Lyra, a high-ranking officer within the Tyrrell's ranks, had grown disillusioned with Commander Vaughn's single-minded obsession with destroying Earth. Lyra understood that the Tyrrell's true threat lay in their fear of humanity's rapid expansion and what that might mean for the galaxy. She believed the Tyrrell could coexist with other species, including humanity, but Vaughn's zeal had blinded him to that possibility. Lyra's internal conflict created a rift within the Tyrrell's ranks, and she saw an opportunity to act. Quietly, she reached out to Tessa, offering her assistance in sabotaging the reactor in exchange for help in undermining Vaughn's authority. Tessa was torn. Trusting an officer of the Tyrrell was dangerous, especially one who had been part of the very force that had captured her. But Lyra's knowledge and position within the Tyrrell could be invaluable. As their fragile alliance grew, so too did Tessa's understanding of the Tyrrell's true motivations. The aggression she had witnessed wasn't the product of a desire for conquest. It was the result of centuries of survival in a hostile universe. The Tyrrell's worldview had been shaped by fear, not just of humanity, but of a far greater, ancient enemy that none of them fully understood. Tessa found herself caught between the truth of Lyra's words and the distrust she felt toward her. The Tyrrell were driven by fear, but so was humanity. And it was this shared experience, this willingness to survive at any cost, that Tessa realized could bridge the gap between them. She was no longer just fighting for her life. She was fighting to change the course of galactic history, to prove that humanity's strength lay not just in its ability to survive, but in its capacity for empathy and understanding. With the plan in place, Tessa, Sarah, and Lyra began to coordinate the sabotage of the reactor. The odds were stacked against them. Timing was crucial, and the ship was crawling with Tyrrell loyalists. But Tessa knew that humanity's strength wasn't just in its weapons or technology. It was in its ability to adapt, to inspire cooperation even in the most unlikely circumstances. The mission to destroy the reactor wasn't just about saving Earth. It was about changing the galaxy's perception of humanity. As the final moments of the mission approached, Tessa stood at the threshold of the reactor's control room. The tension was unbearable. Failure would mean death for all involved, but success would cripple the Tyrrell's ability to wage war. Every moment brought them closer to either victory or destruction. Tessa had no more time for second-guessing. She had made her choice. The future of humanity rested on this gamble, and she would not let it slip away. The warship's interior was like nothing Tessa had ever seen. Towering, cold, and alien, it exuded a menacing aura. Dark metallic walls loomed overhead, flickering with strange lights and holographic interfaces, the hum of the ship's vast energy systems vibrating through the air. Every step she took felt amplified, her boots clanking against the metallic floor, echoing down endless hallways. Around her, the makeshift team of prisoners, carefully assembled by Lyra, moved with quiet urgency. They had a single objective: disable the central reactor. This mission was their only hope of survival. For Earth. For everything they had fought. Lyra led the way, her eyes flicking back to Tessa for reassurance. The trust between them was still fragile. Lyra had proven her loyalty, but every step forward raised the risk of discovery. The reactor was buried deep within the ship's core, shielded by layers of security and energy fields that could neutralize any conventional weapon. This was more than just a physical challenge, it was a war of wits. But Tessa, ever adaptable, had one weapon the Tyrrell had overlooked: human creativity. The Tyrrell had underestimated humanity's resourcefulness. As they neared the reactor's location, Tessa couldn't help but marvel at the ship's terrifying power. Every piece of technology was designed for one purpose: dominance. Shields that could repel any weapon Earth could produce. Sensors that could detect even the faintest biological trace. The Tyrul were prepared for every possible scenario, except for one: the humans' ability to think outside the box, to adapt to impossible odds. "Stay close," Tessa whispered, her voice low but firm. "We move in, disrupt the power grid, and we get out. We can't afford to fail." The Tyrul fleet was already mobilizing, preparing for their final strike on Earth. On board the warship, every second felt like an eternity. Commander Vaughn, with his intense hatred of humanity, had long made the decision to end the fragile peace that had settled across the galaxy. His ships, now charged and ready, were aiming their vast weaponry directly at Earth's most defenseless colonies. Tessa's heart hammered in her chest as they continued their journey toward the reactor. She could feel the tension in her bones, knowing that the longer they took, the closer Earth came to destruction. The Tyrul's massive guns powered up, each one capable of turning an entire colony to ash in a single shot. There was no time to waste. "You need to move faster," Lyra urged, her voice tight with anxiety. Tessa nodded grimly, pushing forward. She had no illusions about the risks. They were racing against time. Every delay, every obstacle brought Earth closer to annihilation. She knew this would be her one chance to make it right. Humanity's survival rested on their success, and if they failed, Earth would burn. They finally reached the reactor's core, the heart of the Tyrul warship. Its immense structure towered before them, pulsating with raw power. The reactor's energy fields shimmered in the air, an impenetrable barrier that could detect even the smallest change in the surrounding environment. Tessa's pulse quickened, and for a moment doubt crept into her thoughts. The magnitude of their task hit her like a weight. To disable the reactor would take more than just strength. It would require a sacrifice. As the team set to work, Tessa's mind flashed back to Earth, her home, her people, the colonies they had built. All of it was at risk. Her eyes met Lyra's. The Tyrul officer had once been her enemy, but now they were allies, bound by the same goal. It was a stark reminder of what humanity could achieve when forced to work with the unknown. But then, as the countdown to the reactor's shutdown began, a voice cut through the tension. It was Jackson, the disgruntled human prisoner who had tried to barter with the Tyrul for his own freedom. "You can't trust her," Jackson hissed to Tessa, his eyes flicking to Lyra. "She's just waiting to betray you, to hand us over." "Do you think she's really on our side?" Tessa hesitated, her hand trembling as it hovered over the reactor's control panel. Jackson's words were a harsh reminder that survival in the galaxy often meant making difficult, morally grey decisions. Betrayal was a common currency in the universe, but Tessa had seen the humanity in Lyra's actions. She could feel the weight of the decision pressing on her. Sacrifice one for the greater good, or risk everything for the hope of a perfect future. It was a decision she could not make lightly. But with Lyra by her side, Tessa knew she had to push forward. The reactor's critical systems were now online, and the core's unstable energy began to pulse. If they didn't act quickly, it would trigger a devastating chain reaction. "Do it," Tessa whispered, her voice steely with resolve. Now, as the reactor began to power down, Tessa's heart raced. She knew this was it, the final moment where everything could go wrong. The Tyrul's weapons started to power down, their fleet faltering in the wake of their loss of power. But even as the reactor hummed with diminishing energy, the ship itself began to tremble. Tessa felt it deep in her bones. The ship, the Tyrul's entire fleet was unraveling. Her team made their escape, fleeing through the halls as alarms blared around them. But Tessa stayed behind, knowing she had to ensure the reactor's complete shutdown. Her mission wasn't just about disabling their weapons. It was about showing the Tyrul that humanity would not back down. It was about sending a message to the galaxy that Earth was more than just a target. It was a force that would rise no matter the odds. Tessa's final steps toward the reactor's core were a blur. With a final push, she triggered the last sequence, and the ship began to break apart. The Tyrol fleet's weapon systems failed, and Earth's colonies were saved. But as the ship's systems collapsed around her, Tessa knew the price of victory. She had given everything. Her final thoughts were of Earth, of the future, of the family she had sworn to protect, and the strength of humanity to rise against any odds. Tessa's sacrifice did not go unnoticed. Across the galaxy, the news of the Tyrol fleet's defeat spread like wildfire. Commander Vaughn, his war machine crippled, was forced to confront the truth. Humanity was not a species to be dismissed. They were resilient, adaptable, and capable of both great destruction and extraordinary survival. The Tyrol leadership was shaken. What had started as a brutal campaign against Earth had turned into a realization that their survival was tied to the very species they had tried to destroy. But it was not just the Tyrol who had learned from Tessa's sacrifice. Earth, united under the memory of her bravery, stood stronger than ever. Her legacy became a symbol, a rallying cry for those who had once doubted humanity's place in the galaxy. As Earth's military forces prepared for the next phase of the war, it was clear that the future would be defined by humanity's unyielding determination to defend its place in the stars. Tessa had given her life to save Earth, but her actions would inspire a generation. And in the quiet aftermath, as Earth's victory was secured, humanity's role in the galaxy had been forever changed. They were no longer just survivors. They were a force to be reckoned with. The message was clear. Humanity would rise, and no one could stand in their way. The aftermath of the battle was a grim tableau across the stars. The Tyrol fleet lay in ruins, shattered by Tessa's heroic actions and the combined might of Earth's military. The vast expanse of space, once filled with the booming fire of war, was now eerily silent, but beneath the silence, the weight of the cost was felt across every corner of the galaxy. Earth had won, but at what price? The war had drained humanity of its resources, its people, and its hope. Yet, in the face of this devastating toll, humanity stood unbroken. The sacrifices made would be remembered forever, but they had forged a new future for Earth. Tessa's legacy had become a beacon of resilience. Even in the wake of unimaginable loss, humanity's spirit had not faltered. Survivors, refugees from the colonies, and those who had fought tooth and nail for every inch of ground, rebuilt not just their homes, but their resolve. Her courage became the fuel that drove the rebuilding process. Her memory was woven into the very fabric of Earth's future. No longer would humanity be defined solely by its past battles, but by the strength it had shown in overcoming them. The galaxy held its breath, waiting to see if humanity could truly rebuild and grow, or if the scars of war would forever define them. Tessa's death, though not a surprise to those who had followed her final sacrifice, was still felt like a cosmic blow. The battle had taken her life, but her death had given Earth its future. Her body was never recovered, lost in the heart of the Tyrol warship, consumed by the very forces she had fought to defeat. The galaxy mourned her loss deeply, not just for her strength, but for the unwavering hope she had given everyone, alien and human alike. Tessa had become more than a leader. She had become a symbol of what humanity was capable of when pushed to the edge of annihilation. Monuments were erected in her honor on Earth, and her story spread across the stars, inspiring even those who had once viewed humanity as nothing more than a primitive species. The Zydran, the Tyrol, alien factions who had once seen humanity as an enemy, now looked upon Tessa's sacrifice with a new understanding. She had not just saved Earth. She had changed the way the galaxy viewed human potential. Her actions rippled through history, sparking hope in those who had forgotten the true meaning of survival. Her story was not just one of military strategy or power, it was a story of compassion, of knowing when to fight and when to understand. It was about unity in the face of adversity, and about a strength of character that made others believe in the possibility of peace. With the Tyrol shattered, Commander Vaughn's reign came to a close. His fanaticism had led his people to the brink of destruction, and his death marked the end of an era. The power vacuum left in his wake was quickly filled by Lyra, a leader who had once stood in the shadow of his tyranny but had now risen to take a new path. Her leadership promised peace, a path of diplomacy and cooperation, something Vaughn had rejected in his obsession with fear and conquest. Lyra had watched as Tessa's sacrifice had rattled the foundations of her people's beliefs. The Tyrol, driven for so long by their hatred of humanity and the fear that Earth's rapid expansion would destroy them, were now forced to reckon with the consequences of their actions. In the wake of Tessa's death, Lyra saw an opportunity for her people to change. The Tyrol's aggressive policies had cost them more than they had ever imagined. With Tessa's example in mind, Lyra vowed to lead the Tyrol into a new era, one of peace, understanding, and unity. Her rise to power represented more than a political shift. It was a cultural revolution within the Tyrol, a realization that their survival could no longer depend on fear and conquest alone. There was a new path forward, one that held the possibility for peace, not just with humanity, but with the many species of the galaxy. The prisoners who had fought alongside Tessa were freed in the wake of the battle. Some chose to return to their homes, to the families they had left behind, while others remained. Inspired by Tessa's unwavering belief in the possibility of peace, they had seen the galaxy in a new light. They realized that not all species, even among those once considered enemies, were driven by cruelty or violence. Some, like Sarah, the Zydran scientist, had already begun to understand that peace was possible. Sarah, having seen firsthand the destruction the Tyrol had wrought, joined forces with Earth's leaders to foster cooperation between human and alien civilizations. She became a crucial ally in bridging the gap between Earth and the alien races that had once viewed humanity with suspicion. The scars of war had not faded, but the path toward peace was now wide open. The prisoners turned allies, helped establish the foundation for a united galaxy, one where the horrors of the past would not be forgotten, but would be used to guide future generations toward cooperation rather than conflict. Tessa's legacy lived on in each of them. Their decision to stand with Earth, to choose peace, despite their past allegiances, was a direct result of the strength Tessa had shown. In a galaxy teetering on the brink of chaos, her courage had shown them all a better way. Humanity, no longer bound solely to the struggles of its past, began to rebuild with a renewed sense of purpose. The new alliances formed in the wake of the war brought hope where despair had once reigned. Earth, once a solitary and fragile outpost in the galaxy, had found its place among the stars, not through power, but through the lessons of resilience, empathy, and sacrifice. The Zydran, once bitter enemies, had become allies in the effort to rebuild. The Tyrol, though scarred by their past mistakes, began to open their hearts to the possibility of peace. And Lyra, the new leader of her people, worked tirelessly to forge a future of collaboration rather than destruction. Tessa's death was not the end. It was the beginning of a new era, one where the galaxy saw humanity not just as a primitive species, but as a force capable of great good, capable of understanding, and capable of leading the way toward peace. As the galaxy's many races moved forward, they carried with them the knowledge that humanity had the strength to rise above even the darkest of days. Tessa Grant's name, her legacy, would live on in the hearts of all those who believed in the possibility of a better future. Her story had become the cornerstone of a new beginning. The road ahead was uncertain, but humanity had proven that, no matter how dark the journey, they would always rise to meet it. And in the galaxy's deepest corners, even the stars themselves seemed to shine a little brighter, guided by the memory of one human who had shown them all the power of strength, courage, and unity. Years had passed since the battle that forever altered the fate of the galaxy, but the memory of General Tessa Grant still burned brightly in the hearts of every soul across Earth and its colonies. Her story had become more than just the tale of one woman's sacrifice. It was a testament to humanity's resilience, its ability to stand firm in the face of overwhelming odds. In schools and military academies, Tessa's name was etched into the curriculum, taught alongside the great heroes of history. Young minds across the stars grew up learning of her bravery, her determination, and the unbreakable spirit she instilled in humanity. Her final stand against the Tyrol had not only secured Earth's survival, but had shifted the very narrative of what it meant to be human. Her actions had shown the galaxy that humanity was capable of great destruction, yes, but also of immense compassion and strength. The truth was simple. Humanity's greatest weapon wasn't just its technology or firepower, it was its ability to adapt, to unite, and to rise in the darkest of times. This story echoed through the cosmos, igniting hope in species long divided by conflict. Earth was no longer seen as a weak and chaotic planet. It was a symbol of what could be achieved when the impossible was pursued with conviction. Lyra, once a high-ranking officer of the Tyrol, now stood at the helm of a peaceful coalition that stretched across the galaxy. The war-torn factions that had once torn apart the cosmos were now working together, united by a common cause, one that Lyra had fought tirelessly for: peace. She had been a part of the brutal force that once tried to annihilate humanity, but Tessa's sacrifice had irrevocably changed her. The lessons learned from the destruction of her own people under Commander Vaughn's reign had inspired a transformation, not just within the Tyrol, but across the galaxy. The Tyrol, once feared and loathed, were now rebuilding themselves. Their war-hardened minds, once bent on destruction, were now focused on cooperation. The galaxy's former enemies, the Zidran included, had put aside their distrust in pursuit of a unified future. Lyra's leadership was a direct result of the courage and selflessness Tessa had demonstrated. Her diplomatic efforts were guided by the wisdom of Tessa's legacy, forging new bonds between species and opening doors to a future that had seemed impossible just years before. Earth had gone from being the object of suspicion to a central figure in the galaxy's ongoing quest for peace. Lyra's work was far from over, but under her leadership, the universe was moving closer to something Tessa had always dreamed of: a future where cooperation, not conflict, defined the stars. As Earth entered this new era of unity, its people were propelled into the unknown with a renewed sense of purpose. No longer was the galaxy a cold, distant expanse to be feared. It was now a vast frontier full of promise, one where discovery and cooperation took precedence over suspicion and isolation. The once solitary, war-torn planet that had barely survived the conflict with the Tyrol was now at the forefront of intergalactic exploration. With Lyra's diplomatic efforts and Tessa's vision as their guiding lights, Earth began to push deeper into uncharted regions of space. Colonies, once confined to Earth's closest systems, expanded further than ever before, eager to discover new worlds, new allies, and new possibilities. Scientific advancements, born from collaboration with alien species, surged forward at a pace that had been unimaginable before the war. Technologies that once seemed like distant dreams, cures for diseases, sustainable energy sources, faster than light, travel, became tangible. Earth's military might, while still formidable, now served as a symbol of defense, not aggression, as humanity worked alongside its allies to ensure peace. But even as the stars beckoned with new opportunities, the challenges ahead were undeniable. Humanity's continued growth would bring them into contact with unknown species, unforeseen cosmic phenomena, and the potential for internal conflicts. But humanity had learned valuable lessons, both from Tessa's life and death, and the hard truths of war. Earth, now a united force in the galaxy, was determined to meet whatever came next, with the same resolve that had seen them through their darkest hours. The road ahead would be difficult. The galaxy, though more united, was still fraught with danger, but humanity had proven its worth in the most dire of circumstances. Tessa Grant's legacy had laid the foundation for a new chapter in galactic history, a chapter where Earth stood strong, not just as a survivor, but as a leader among the stars. Tessa's courage, her sacrifices, and her unshakable belief in the strength of humanity would be the beacon that guided future generations. No matter how dark the unknown might seem, humanity would rise to face it always. The galaxy was waiting, and humanity was ready.